I didn't cry when my parents told me they wouldn't be coming to my graduation. I didn't shout. I didn't push back. I just sat there, staring at the wall, listening as they explained they'd already booked a resort getaway with my sister. That moment should have shattered me. Instead, it made everything painfully clear. So I made a different decision. I invited the people who had actually been there for me when no one else was. I didn't make an announcement. I didn't give anyone a heads up. When graduation day arrived, the cameras were rolling, the auditorium was packed, and my parents were watching from a hotel room, convinced they'd made a harmless choice. My name is Luna. I was 22 when this happened, and for most of my life, I was the easy one. The quiet child. The one who didn't ask for much. That's how my parents always described me when people asked. My sister, though, needed everything. At our family table, conversations naturally bent toward her. Her job stress, her plans, her letdowns. My parents listened to her the way people lean in when they're afraid they might miss something important. When I spoke, they nodded politely, their eyes already drifting, waiting for me to finish so they could return to what really mattered. From the outside, our house looked warm and welcoming. Framed photos lined the walls. Holiday decorations stayed up weeks longer than they should have. Coffee filled the air every morning. But inside, there was an unspoken order. Everyone understood it without needing to say a word. My sister was the center. I circled around her. When I got accepted into college, the excitement lasted maybe 5 minutes. Then my mom said, "That's great, honey," and immediately turned to ask my sister about a trip she was planning. I paid my own tuition with scholarships and part-time jobs. I handled my own bills, my own expenses, my own everything. My parents helped my sister with her car, her apartment, whatever she needed. The one time I asked for help with textbooks, my mom smiled and said, "You're so independent, Luna. You'll figure it out." I learned not to ask again. By the time graduation was approaching, I already knew how the conversation would unfold. I still made the call. Part of me needed to hear it straight from them. My mom didn't even hesitate. "We already have plans with your sister," she said. My dad added that she was going through a stressful period and needed them more. Neither of them asked what graduating meant to me. I ended the call and sat on my bed, staring at the cap and gown hanging on my closet door. The familiar ache settled into my chest, but beneath it was something different. Not sadness. Not anger. Clarity. I realized I wasn't waiting to be chosen anymore. I was done hoping they'd suddenly notice me. For the first time in my life, I began to wonder what it might look like to choose myself instead. When you're overlooked your entire life, you stop expecting anything. You convince yourself it doesn't hurt anymore. And even when it does, you learn to swallow the disappointment quietly and keep going. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. My parents missed my high school award ceremony because my sister had a work event. When I won a small writing prize during my sophomore year of college, my mom said she was proud, then immediately asked if I could help my sister move that weekend. Every milestone of mine felt like background noise to something louder, more urgent, something that wasn't me. I worked part-time all through school, late nights, early mornings. I learned how to stretch a paycheck and decide which bills could wait a few extra days. Meanwhile, my sister talked casually about expenses my parents covered for her, as if that was just how life worked. When she joked about my small writing projects, my parents laughed along. Not cruelly, just easily, like they saw no reason to stop her. So when graduation came, I wasn't shocked. They chose a resort trip over me. It didn't make the pain sharper. It just made it familiar. A few days later, I was sitting at the kitchen table in my best friend's house, helping her mom fold laundry. It was one of those ordinary afternoons that feel warmer than they should. The radio played softly. The windows were open. Her dad walked by and asked how graduation planning was going. I hesitated before answering. Then I told them the truth. There was a pause, not the uncomfortable silence I was used to, but a heavy one. Her mom slowly set the towels down. Her dad shook his head, like he couldn't quite process what he'd just heard. "That's not right," her mom said. "This is a big day." They didn't try to fix it. They didn't offer advice. They just listened. Then her mom smiled at me, the kind of smile that makes your chest ache a little. "Well," she said gently, "we'd love to be there if you want us." The words caught me completely off guard. I hadn't planned to say yes. I hadn't planned anything at all. But in that moment, something shifted. I came to understand that I'd been treating my parents' absence like a rule I was obligated to follow, instead of a decision I was allowed to answer. So I said yes. That evening, I sat by myself in my room, staring at my phone. I considered calling my parents, to tell them, to explain, to somehow soften it. But then it hit me. I didn't owe anyone an explanation for choosing people who actually showed up. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. And once that shift happened in my mind, there was no closing that door again. After I said yes, everything grew oddly quiet. Not peaceful, exactly. More like the stillness that comes before something final. There was no dramatic aftermath. My parents didn't suddenly call to change their plans. My sister didn't notice anything at all. Life went on exactly as it always had, with me on the edges and them at the center. And for the first time, I stopped resisting that truth. What my family didn't realize was that my life had been moving in another direction for a long time. While I was in school, I'd been working quietly, writing late into the night, revising scripts between classes, accepting feedback, improving, learning how to handle rejection without letting it empty me out. I never mentioned any of it at home because no one ever asked. And eventually, I learned not to offer information that would only be overlooked. A few weeks before graduation, my manager pulled me aside after a long meeting. We stood in a hallway that carried the faint smell of burnt coffee and printer toner. He told me the project I'd been working on had advanced in a much bigger way than anyone expected. There would be public recognition. He asked if I'd be comfortable with it happening at graduation, in front of my school. I remember blinking at him, caught off guard. Then I thought about the empty seats that had been meant for my parents. "Yes," I said. "That's fine." I didn't tell my family, not because I was hiding it, but because it never occurred to me to share good news with people who had never made room for it before. I completed the forms the school sent. In the section labeled Family Guests, I wrote the names of the people who had asked how I was doing without being prompted. As graduation day approached, I expected nerves. Instead, I felt steady. I pressed my cap, set out my gown, and folded it neatly over the back of my chair. When my mom texted me a photo of the resort view, I looked at it for a moment, then placed my phone face down. That night, I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, but because I felt different, lighter, more grounded. I realized something then that I wish I'd understood years earlier. Losing people who never truly showed up isn't a loss. It's a release. When I turned off the light and climbed into bed, I knew the next day wouldn't just be about finishing school. It would be about who was allowed to stand with me when everything I'd built finally came into view. Graduation day arrived quietly. No last-minute calls, no sudden changes of heart. Morning light filtered through the curtains, gentle and unconcerned, as if the world wasn't holding its breath the way I was. I dressed slowly. The gown felt heavier than I'd expected, the sleeves brushing my wrists as I adjusted it. My cap sat crooked at first, and I laughed softly as I fixed it in the mirror. I no longer saw a girl waiting to be noticed. I saw someone who had completed something difficult. When we reached the auditorium, the air hummed with sound. Families filled the rows, hugging, laughing, snapping photos that would eventually be framed or forgotten in drawers. Out of habit, I scanned the crowd, even though I already knew where my parents wouldn't be sitting. Then I saw them. My best friend's parents were waving from the family section, her mom already clutching a tissue. Her dad was smiling like this moment belonged to his own child. A warmth settled in my chest, not sadness, not longing, but gratitude. Backstage, as we lined up, the lights dimmed and the music swelled. Names were announced. One by one, students crossed the stage. When my turn came, I stepped forward, my heart calm, my hand steady. I shook the dean's hand, accepted my diploma, and smiled into the applause. It was loud, sincere, and for the first time, it felt like it was truly meant for me. I thought that would be the high point of the day. I was wrong. After the final name was called, the dean returned to the microphone. He paused, glancing toward the side of the stage, then back at the audience. "Before we conclude," he said, "we have a special recognition from one of our industry partners." A ripple passed through the room. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral, eyes fixed ahead. A woman stepped onto the stage, confident, polished. I recognized her instantly. She'd been part of my professional world for years, long before my family ever bothered to ask how I was spending my time. She took the microphone and spoke with clarity and calm, the kind of voice that commands attention without demanding it. "One of your fellow graduates has contributed to a project that exceeded every expectation we had," she said. Her work became the backbone of a major production now moving ahead. The room fell silent. I could sense people shifting in their chairs. "She said my name." I rose, my legs slightly unsteady, and walked back onto the stage. Up close, the lights were brighter, warm against my skin. I took the folder. She placed it in my hands, my fingers tightening just enough to steady my breathing. She spoke about the project using measured, rounded figures, a substantial budget, a long-term opportunity, a commitment that would change my life. I didn't look for my parents. I didn't have to. Then she said it. "We would also like to recognize the parents who supported her throughout this journey." Time seemed to slow. I heard quiet murmurs ripple through the crowd. She turned not toward the empty seats my parents would have filled, but toward the section where my best friends' parents were sitting. "Would you please join us on stage?" For a moment, they didn't move. Her mom looked around, confused, her hand hovering near her chest. Her dad leaned in, whispering something I couldn't hear. I met their eyes and nodded. They stood. The walk up the aisle felt longer than my own trip across the stage. The audience watched, curious and unsure. When they reached us, her mom was already crying, not quietly, but openly, the kind of tears that come from being overwhelmed by something you never expected to be part of. The woman handed them an envelope and a framed certificate. She explained it simply. A recognition gift. A thank you for believing, for showing up, for being present. The amount was stated once, clearly, without ceremony. The room reacted immediately. Gasps. Applause. People rising to their feet. Her mom covered her mouth. Her dad pulled her close, an arm around her shoulders. Eyes bright. I stood there and let it happen, letting the truth exist in the open. The cameras caught everything, the expressions, the confusion shifting into understanding, the pride that had nothing to do with blood. Hundreds of miles away, my parents were watching from a resort room. I know this because later, when I checked my phone, the evidence was there. But in that moment, I didn't think about them at all. I thought about every night I'd worked alone, every bill I'd paid on my own, every time I'd swallowed a story, because no one wanted to hear it. And I felt something finally settle into place. This was what showing up looked like. When the ceremony ended, the crowd spilled out into the afternoon light. My best friend's parents hugged me again and again, like letting go might make it vanish. "We're so proud of you," her mom kept saying. "We're so proud." I smiled, nodded, thanked people as they congratulated me. I took photos. I laughed. I breathed. Then my phone began to vibrate. At first, I ignored it. I didn't need to look to know who it was. But it kept going, buzz after buzz after buzz. When I finally pulled it from my pocket, the screen was nearly full of alerts. Missed calls. Messages. More missed calls. 78 of them. Texts. Stacked on top of one another. Some panicked. Some angry. Some pleading. My mom's name again and again. My dad's number. My sister, suddenly desperate. I didn't open a single one. I turned the phone face down and slipped it back into my pocket. We went to dinner afterward, the four of us, at a small place near campus. Nothing fancy, just warm food, clinking glasses, and the steady hum of conversation. Her dad insisted on a toast. Her mom kept reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. At one point, my phone buzzed again, and her mom glanced at it softly. "You don't have to answer that," she said. "I know." I replied, and I meant it. The story spread faster than I expected. Clips from the ceremony surfaced online. Local outlets picked it up. People shared it, commented, argued, applauded. Some called it cruel. Others called it justice. I didn't engage with any of it. My parents tried everything. They called mutual friends, left messages with extended family. My sister posted a public message about how proud she was, how she'd always believed in me. It didn't land the way she'd hoped. People remembered things. Screenshots came back, old comments, old jokes at my expense. The calls didn't stop. Neither did my silence. A few days later, my parents reached out through a third party, asking for a conversation. They said there had been a misunderstanding, that they deserved recognition, that they were my parents. I listened as the message was passed to me. Then I thanked the person and went back to my work, because here was the truth they didn't want to accept. They weren't calling because they missed me. They were calling because they missed the moment. And that door was already closed. In the days that followed, my life didn't unravel. It settled. I returned to work, meetings, revisions, long hours. That felt different now. Not heavier, cleaner. The kind of tired that comes from building something real. My best friend's parents checked on me every morning, not for updates, just to ask how I was. Sometimes I didn't know what to say, so I answered, "Okay." And that was enough. My parents kept trying, through relatives, through old family friends. They wanted to explain, to be seen, to reclaim something they believed was theirs. I never replied. Silence wasn't a punishment. It was a boundary. Eventually, the calls slowed. The messages stopped. Life moved forward the way it always does when you stop feeding the chaos. What surprised me most wasn't how calm I felt. It was how little guilt remained. I had spent years believing love meant endurance, that family meant tolerance. Now I understood something simpler. Love shows up, family stays. And once you learn that difference, you don't unlearn it. Today, when people ask about my family, I don't hesitate. I talk about the ones who showed up, the ones in the front row, the ones who chose me without conditions. Blood didn't make them my family. Presence did. If you've ever been overlooked by the people who were supposed to stand beside you, know this, you're not wrong for choosing yourself. You're not cold for closing a door that kept you small. If this story felt familiar, share it in the comments and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story.